The Vietnam War, Section 1, with Ms. Lashy. Domino theory. Domino theory is if one country falls to communism, it is very likely that the surrounding countries will also fall to communism. Containment. Containment was a U.S. policy after World War II to try and prevent the spread of communism. If a country had already fallen to communism, the U.S. would not interfere. However, if they needed aid to contain the spread of communism in their country, the U.S. would provide it. The Truman Doctrine and Eisenhower Doctrine were both part of this policy of containment. So under the U.S. policy of containment, if the country was already communist, the U.S. would just turn a blind eye to it, like, okay, fine, you're communist. But if a country that wasn't communist might fall to communism, they would go in and try to help them and not let them fall to communism. So that's the U.S. policy of containment. Ho Chi Minh. Ho Chi Minh was the nationalist communist leader of the North Vietnamese. He helped to liberate Vietnam from French control in the 1950s. He established the Democratic Republic of Vietnam in the north. Vietnam prior to the Vietnam War. France fought the Viet Minh during the First Indochina War from 1946 to 1954. France claimed Vietnam as a colony. In 1950, the Soviet Union and China recognized Minh's Republic of Vietnam in the north. The U.S. and Great Britain gave their support to the French-backed state of Vietnam, based out of Saigon in the south. Military advisors from the Republic of China began helping the Viet Minh. The U.S. began training South Vietnamese troops and supplying them with aid in the 1950s. The Geneva Accords of 1954. During the Geneva Conference, also known as the Geneva Accords, Laos and Cambodia became independent countries. Vietnam was divided into two separate countries. North Vietnam was controlled by Ho Chi Minh and the Communists. South Vietnam became a pro-Western nation. The goal was to reunite North and South Vietnam in 1956 with an election. If you look at this map here to the right, the olivish, yellowish kind of color in the north part, that is North Vietnam, and the darker blue color is South Vietnam. If you look just to the left of those two, you can see Laos in the north and Cambodia in the south, and they border Vietnam to the west. The Republic of Vietnam. The Republic of Vietnam was controlled by Diem. Diem was the self-appointed president. The Republic of Vietnam was located in southern Vietnam. Diem. He was the self-appointed president of the Republic of Vietnam. He was Roman Catholic. The majority of Vietnam was Buddhist. He opposed communism. Many South Vietnamese viewed him as a U.S. puppet. He was overthrown and murdered in a coup in 1963. So he was actually very prejudicial to the Buddhists and really suppressed their religious rights. And the majority of Vietnam was Buddhist. So that definitely caused a lot of people to not like Diem. They also thought he was a U.S. puppet, which means that he was just doing whatever the U.S. told him to do. And then there was a military coup in 1963 where the military overthrew him and they killed him or assassinated him. Viet Cong. The Viet Cong were the South Vietnamese communists. They were aided by the North Vietnamese communists. They opposed Diem's government. They began a guerrilla war against the Republic of Vietnam and southern Vietnam. They took control of villages and assassinated South Vietnamese officials. The Viet Cong were very hard to identify because they were civilians and they dressed in civilian clothing, like this woman here on the right who was a member of the Viet Cong. So you didn't know if the person sitting next to you in a cafe or walking down the street was a member of the Viet Cong or not. Guerrilla warfare is when you're not meeting in open fields to like attack each other one-on-one, face-to-face, and instead you're just popping out of, behind buildings or bushes or forests. You're popping in and out and quickly moving. So it's not direct combat as you would think.